looks like a football field. It's very green. Today is the Lord's Day. It's the day that we gather together to worship. We, the children of God. God's people have been gathering together ever since they were in the desert. And we continue to do that, even today. We gather together each Sunday, each week, to celebrate what God has done and what God will do. There's no accidents about the way that we gather to worship. In fact, we even have a special place where we gather together. Ours is called the sanctuary. God gave a lot of specific instructions on how to gather together. Nothing we do is by accident. We usually gather together for about an hour, and it's all centered on the Word of God. The living Word of God, Jesus, and the written Word of God in the Bible. There are usually 5 movements or things that we do during the hour. Now, we don't gather just because we decide to. We gather because we're called by God to this place to join together with the family. Everyone is invited. That's why we are very welcoming when we gather. We even have a time where we stand up and say hi to each other. Well, we gather to hear the Word of God, and usually someone will read from the Bible. That's called proclaiming the Word. Someone, usually a pastor, will also preach a sermon. A sermon is learning about God from stories and times and places in the Bible that help us make sense during our everyday lives of what it means to follow God. We respond to God in many ways. Sometimes we'll pray as we respond. We'll sing songs in response. Sometimes we'll even give tithes and offerings as we respond to the Word. You know, we also receive gifts. We practice receiving gifts in 2 ways at our church. These are called sacraments. Sacraments are special ways that we receive God's grace, and they are said to seal that grace within us. That means that they're God's promises kept. God promised to love us, and God does that. The 2 sacraments that we celebrate are baptism and communion, or the Lord's Supper. Now, after we've taken communion, we'll usually sing a song or 2, and then someone will get up and send us out with a blessing or a good word. We call that the benediction. Now, we're not ending worship because there's no end to worshiping God, but we are sent out. We're sent out into our families, our neighborhoods, our schools, our city, and around the world to continue praising God through our lives and showing love to others. Our worship never ends. It goes on outside, and we're sent to do that. And then we come back and we gather again to tell each other what God has done during the week. Now, I wonder if any of you have spent time in worship and celebration here at our church. I wonder if any of you have a favorite Bible verse. I wonder if you remember your baptism. I wonder if you have ever taken communion. I wonder who God has for you to go and show love to today as we are sent from this place. I wonder about this week. I wonder what we will be celebrating next week as we gather again.